Hi folks, this is Mike with Chasing Trail, and I am wearing pink lobster shorts because I am a hip and with it person. I thought I'd do a video on my 2021 KTM 500 EXC-F 6 days build. I've been wanting to do this for a while, and I finally got everything done that I want to do to the bike, so I consider it finished now. I thought I'd go over all the things I've done and why I did them. The bike is also nice and clean right now. Had a bath, so I figured this was a good time to do it. The first thing, and this is the only mod that was done when I purchased the bike only had 60 miles on it when I bought it. It was the Seat Concepts Comfort XL seat. That is a must-have. The stock seat is hard as a rock and feels like some sort of torture device. Next thing I did, I put on, I'm not going to pull this off because it looks like the standard air filter, but I put on a Twin Air ProFlow air filter. It uses an aluminum cage and it removes the screen spark arrestor, spark protector that's on the stock air filter. It has a flame retardant lining so that if there is a backfire, that's what it is, a backfire screen. So it removes that so there's better airflow, and has a flame retardant lining so that if there is a backfire, your air filter won't catch on fire. Adds the aluminum air filter basket, and then I also put it's like a neoprene ring that goes around the intake boot, and that just helps it give a nice tight seal without having to put a bunch of grease on there every time. So the main reason I did that was just to have as tight a seal as possible. I ride in really dusty conditions. I just don't want to have any dust getting sucked in there. The side benefit was that you get a little bit better airflow. Moving on, I put on these hand guards. These are the stoutest, beefiest guards I know of. They're made by Highway Dirt Bikes. They require tapping the handlebars. They provide the tap. I had to buy a tap wrench. It's the first time I've ever tapped anything in my life. But I took my time, I watched the video, I was careful, and they are incredibly sturdy and stout. I mean, these things are not going to bend. I also, along with that, I purchased this modular system. It gives you this clamp. It relocates the ignition. The ignition sits down here, and it's just clipped on by here. You can actually see it's this wobbly little thing right here. This is where it sits by default, and it's really flimsy. Just doesn't feel very good. Here it's nice and solid and stable. It relocates the turn signal, which also previously was like down on the side down here, and it was hard to see. I still forget it's on all the time like an asshole and just ride around with it on. And it relocates the dash and brings the dash up a little bit because it was kind of hard to see before. It sat down kind of low. Just overall makes this much nicer, and has this option for these mirrors which just flip out. Now I will say these mirrors aren't all that practical. They're very difficult to see through when you're on the road. I have to kind of lean over to see through them, but they do work, and it's nice that when you get off-road you can just fold them in. They tuck in there really nicely and are out of the way. So overall I'm happy with that system. I put on these Acerbis fork boot protectors. On the DRZ I had, it had taken a pretty good hit on the bottom of the fork here and got it all scraped and scratched up, so I just wanted to have something on there to protect those. This side I had to cut it. You can see my sort of crude handiwork there because the 6 days model has this axle puller. That's one of the features of the 6 days, so it didn't fit by default, so I just had to cut that to make it fit. God, I'm getting bit by fucking mosquitoes. Wretched, worthless creatures. Sorry. Put on this tugger strap right here, just in case if the bike, I've actually seen some videos, I think it was Bill Royce's video I had watched, where there's a tree blocking the trail, and so they had to lay the bikes over and pull on it with this strap, and it actually made it really easier for them to move the bike or maneuver it around and pull it through stuff. So thought that was a good thing to have. I added a Cyclops LED headlight. I think you can see the bulb there, the stock bulb was pretty garbage. It really was not very bright, so I just wanted a brighter, better headlight. That was a pretty much plug and play mod, pretty easy to do. I put on a different oil filler cap. It looks good and it's easier to turn on. There's not really any other reason. The first time I rode the bike, it was actually seeping a little bit of oil out of there. I don't know if it had been overfilled or just wasn't on there tight enough or what, but it's functional and looks good. I added this rear rotor guard by Tusk, as well as the axle blocks that make it easier to adjust. You only need one tool, otherwise you can see this mosquito flying around, little bastard. You can do it now with one tool because of this cam, the way it holds it in there. It just makes this easier. Plus it looks nice. This rotor guard is really beefy. It goes up and around there. Wasn't too bad to install. If I can do it, anyone can do it. I replaced the stock shock spring. It was too soft because I'm fat, so that's just a stiffer shock spring. This is the easiest shock spring I've ever replaced. It was cake to do it. You just undo the 2 bolts, pull off this mud guard, and it just slides right out due to the way this PDS linkage works. Really, really easy to do. So that was awesome. I haven't replaced the skid plate. This one has this, it's pretty beefy plastic, and I actually think it's good enough until I bang this up or see that I'm, taking some kind of significant hits. I'm just gonna run with the stock skid plate. It's nice and light, doesn't add any weird engine noise, so I'm happy with that. Put on the Fastway ProMoto billet end cap with the ultra silent insert. Probably can't see up in those little holes that are drilled into it. In addition to that, I added a JD jetting fuel controller. So the combination of the twin air, in fact, I will just pop this off real quick. So in combination, you won't really be able to see this neoprene ring, but there's a neoprene ring all around the air boot now that the air filter sits up against. I have the JD jetting fuel controller velcroed in and tucked in back there. I put a little battery tender dongle on here too. Put that on every bike, it's convenient. So with the twin air, I probably need to clean that. Twin air ProFlow air filter, the fuel controller, and the end cap. That's what I did to uncork it. It definitely made a noticeable difference in power. I left the reed valves in the intake per Takamoto's video on that. That will retain more low and mid-range power, which is where I spend most of my time. I don't ride at wide open throttle, and I'm sure it would be more power without that ultra silent, but I'm really happy with the compromise. There's more power, but it's not obnoxiously loud, so I really like that. I had planned to put on a bigger gas tank. I had one on order. It had been on back order for 3 months. I just canceled that order. I had put a Tusk rear rack on and experimented with carrying some more weight, but I realized that adding the weight really changed the handling characteristics in a way I didn't like. And so I ended up pulling that back off and decided I don't really want to carry any more fuel. I don't want to change the handling further. I had some concerns about the way the Achirby's tank mounts with these self-tapping screws, and some people have had issues, blah, blah, blah. I don't need it. I've not had any come anywhere close to running out of fuel. And even if I do end up taking a really long ride or something, which would be very infrequently, I just get some fuel bottles or something and throw one in the backpack, and that would be good enough for my needs. The thing I like most about this bike, and the reason I bought it, was the lightweight. And so I want to do everything I can to keep it as light as possible. I also added this rear strap back here because unlike a Beta, which has nice built-in handles, this does not. I was not able to mount it to the stock location, which says to put it with the seat bolts, because the Seat Concepts seat is so wide, it just would not mount there. So I ended up having to mount it up underneath here, but that works fine. And it makes it much easier to pick up the rear end of the bike and move it around. The whole fender subframe back here does not feel very sturdy. I would not feel comfortable pulling on that very much. That's one thing I liked about the CRF 450L. It had a really beefy, sturdy subframe back here. This one does not. It's pretty floppy, so it's much better with that strap. Trying to think if there's anything else. I've covered most of it. I think the last thing I did, and I just did this tonight, I had actually purchased this stuff for the larger tank, but I decided to go ahead and put it on anyway. It's a larger banjo that attaches to the fuel tank here, a little bit beefier quick release connector, and fuel filter here. So I thought I would just put this on. People had recommended this, some of this bigger fuel filter, as well as the quick disconnect. And a lot of people, I'd even run into people out on the trail who'd said to replace this with a metal one, that in a crash, you can knock this on a rock or something and it would crack the stock plastic one, and then you just shit out of luck. So figured it was good to go ahead and keep this stuff and just throw it on. I'd already bought it, so why not? That was pretty easy to do. I think that is pretty much it. I don't feel a need at this point to do anything else to this bike. It is set up perfectly for my needs and what I want to do. Oh, that's not true. Last thing I might do is replace this stock clutch lever. The clutch pull on this, it is a hydraulic clutch, but it's a pretty stiff pull. It might be that this lever is actually, even the stock lever is pretty short. I get some carpal tunnel, and so at the end of a ride, my hand is cramping pretty bad. There's I think it was Mountain Engineering or something, that makes a adjustable clutch lever that's supposed to reduce the pull a little bit. So I may or may not look into that. I don't know. I could stop being a pussy. That's, we'll see. But overall, that is my build. I'm very happy with it. Bike is super light. Feels great. I love the suspension. It's surprisingly competent on the street, other than a lot of vibrations through the foot pegs. Beyond that, yeah, it's a sweet machine. So anyway, I think that wraps it up. Covers everything I wanted to talk about. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions about anything I did or reasons why I chose the things I did, I'm more than happy to answer any of those I can. I thought about doing a tail tidy, but I actually think the stock one doesn't look too bad. It's not as bad as a lot of them, so I'm just going to leave that on there. Once these TKC 80s are worn out, I'll definitely replace them with something a little more off-road oriented. We'll see what happens there. But yeah, thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll catch you next time.